You wished upon a star.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream. Disneyland.
Just go to Action Park. There's no other park like it.
Six Flags Great Adventure. It's not a world away.
Paramount's Kings Island.
We will officially open Universal Studios Florida.
Hello, I'm Michael Eisner.
Now, here is your host.
Hello and welcome back to the Defunctland Podcast. My name is Kevin Perger. Today I am joined by the extremely talented puppeteer Noel MacNeal. Noel, it is an honor to have you on today.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So we just had the first episode of a new spin-off to Defunctland called Defunct TV, and the focus was on Bear in the Big Blue House. I'm going to let you drive this conversation. So to start off, can you just tell me a little bit about your involvement with that show?
Yeah. Basically, I was the puppeteer, and I have to say voice, because the thing is, for some reason, people think if you just say puppeteer, then they'll say, oh, did you do the voice too? It's like, yes, I did. That's what being a puppeteer means. You get to do the puppet, and 99.9% of the time, you do get to do the voice. So I was the voice and the puppeteer inside Bear, which was, as I called it, the Big Bird technology, because I was inside, and he's what's called a full body puppet, or a walk-around puppet. It's because you can actually walk around. And in order to see, I couldn't. So inside was a tiny little TV set, a monitor, and a microphone, so I could speak as Bear's voice. And what you saw at home is what I saw. I couldn't see out. So I saw Bear the way you saw Bear on your television set. And because it's TV, it's flipped. So it's all backwards. So if you have a Mac at home, like open it up, go to iMovie and click that little arrow that's pointing down to import things, and say from, the Mac camera. And when the Mac camera comes on, put your hand up and like point to your right, and it'll look like on the screen you're pointing to your left. That's what it's like. And you just, for a TV puppetry, you just practice and you just get used to it. So that's how I performed Bear on the TV show. And then because of his popularity, Disney was wondering if the show would be popular in the park. Actually, I was wondering if the show would be popular in the park in terms of like a ride or some sort of attraction. So I normally would go down for New Year's with my family, with my wife, and my mom came along. And I said to Peter Van Roden, who was an executive at Henson at the time, now he's an executive at Universal Studios. And I said, I'm going to be down for New Year's. If you send down Bear and a Wrangler, at that time it was Andrea Detweiler, let's see if it's popular. Let me do a little meet and greet. And he's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, go for it. So they did. They sent Bear down, sent Andrea, and got into Bear. And then it made more sense for Bear to be at it was called then the Disney MGM Studios. Now it's the Hollywood Studios, because of the fact that it was a show. And so they decided it would make more sense for Bear to be part of the Hollywood Studios. And so right next to the Great Movie Ride, I came out and just like stood there, and people suddenly like looked over and saw Bear, and I waved, and they ran over, and I would say hi to kids, and I would take pictures. Well, a Disney person, a park person, came over and leaned into me and said very quietly but very politely, "You're not allowed to talk." And Bear turned to him and said, "Yes, I can." And I said, no, you're really not allowed to talk. And Bear put his hand on his shoulder and said very politely, "No, really, I really am allowed." And that's when the Henson people explained to him. They're like, "No, this really is Bear from the TV show." And it's like, oh. And so after that, V Corp is the company that makes all those shows, like Sesame Street Live, and I think they were part of like the Ice Capades for a while, but they were part of those arena shows. And so they were wondering too if Bear would also be a popular attraction for an arena show. So first they did a mall show, a little mall tour. They made this big blue house, and it was with Bear and like the puppet characters, but the puppet characters scaled up. It was such a hit that Disney just bought it, lock, stock, and big blue house, and put it into the soundstage at the Disney MGM studios, and it became Bear in the Big Blue House live. And it was a huge success. And so for that show, that's when, and for the mall tour in general, that's when myself and my co-stars, Peter Lynch, Tyler Bunch, and Vicky Eibner, that's when we recorded our voices, the character voices, and had puppeteers trained to lip sync along. I went to initially went to B Corp in Minneapolis and consulted and trained with the Bear puppeteers, and Tyler Bunch trained the Ham puppeteers. And the same thing happened in Disney World. They had puppeteers there, but we went down and consulted with them and told them, like, this is how this character would move. This is how, even little things, this is how this character would listen. And also, whenever you get a chance, like, look at the audience, because they're part of this too, because that's what we always did on the show, especially Bear. Bear would look at the audience to keep them engaged and to keep them focused, as well as to the, occasional adult out there. Bear would often like lower his eyebrows and kind of give that sort of, you've been through this, what I'm going through moment, especially with the otters messing up the living room. So it was a huge success. After that, that's when Disney got the bright idea, hey, you know what? We've got a lot of other shows on, Playhouse Disney. In fact, instead of like creating separate shows for them, why don't we try and like fit them into the Bear show? And so that's what they did. So Bear in the Big Blue House became Playhouse Disney Live. And they shoehorned in all these other characters so that Bear became an intro and an outro. And the tying thread was Tutter and the human host. And I think the human host was, it had a name that could be either male or female. So this way they could switch out the human host. Like, I think it was like Terry, like one of the, so it was like Terry could be a guy for some shows, or Terry could be a girl for some shows. And then they would see these like tales that helped Tutter get through his shyness. And so it would be tales from Stanley, or from the Book of Pooh, or and eventually just like had all the puppet versions of these like cartoon characters. And then it would wrap up with Bear and Luna and everybody singing the goodbye song. And then when Bear stopped airing, that's when they took Bear out, and then it just became, and that's also when it went from being Playhouse Disney Live to being Disney Junior. And so they just revamped the whole show. So now it's Disney Junior Live, and it's all puppet versions of what's currently on the Disney Junior. So that's how that all evolved. So for the parks anyway. And Bear got to be a part of the Christmas parades that would air, the Disney World Christmas parades, which would always be shot around November, like the segments they would shoot in November. So at the time when you would watch the Christmas parade, they would cut live to the parade like on Main Street, USA. But any like cutaways to like celebrities or other characters, that was all pre-recorded like over a month in advance. And like around like the 1st of November. And so Bear would get to go down and do those segments. In fact, one time there was like at the end there was like a whole big, they wanted to have a big crowd scene with all the characters and the Santa Claus float and everybody there. And so, and that's what they would do too. They would also pre-record the parade so that in case of inclement weather on Christmas Day, they had a parade to fall back on. And so they had this big crowd scene, and Bear was up front with Clay Aikens and a couple of the celebrities and Wayne Brady. And behind him is like all the Disney characters like Mickey and Minnie and Baloo and Pluto. And so but they wanted a photo of everybody. So, oh, everybody look up here, smile. And Bear turned around and said to the characters, say cheese. oh, just kidding. And everybody, of course, mimed the oh shucks and oh we can't and things like that. So,
well, this is perfect. This is getting all of our Bear in the Big Blue House in the parks information right out of the gate. So if anybody just wants to know about the theme park aspect of the show after this segment, I guess they're going to tune out. But as far as this goes, so this entire, the live shows and the Disney MGM and all that stuff, it all started from that one walk around experience you had?
well, yeah, I mean, I took Bear, the one from the show, because he was there's walkarounds like, Mickey and Minnie are walkarounds, but a walk-around puppet or a full body puppet is what Bear is. It's what Big Bird is. It's like the next step of being. It's not just a costume. It really is a puppet, but it's a puppet you wear from head to toe. And so I took Bear down, and this way I was able to walk around because at that point, that's when the crafty people at Muppets at the Henson Company had figured out how to put a camera into Bear's left eye.
Oh, okay. This was going to be my next question: is how did that experience go if you couldn't see?
Yeah, so this little like camera in his left eye, but there's like little glint, and so they had a matching eye with a matching glint. And so, if the vision I had was, imagine, okay, everybody who's listening, you too, Kev, take your left hand and make a circle and put it around your left eye, and then with your right hand cover your right eye. So that's pretty much the vision I had with a monitor, with the monitor that I had. So this way, I had to make sure that, people weren't like, blindsiding me on my right side and just being aware that I only had like vision out of like the left eye. But then I could see things. And so I could see people and talk to people and actually walk around and be free and just wander around, which was great. So I started using that for when I did appearances because Bear was popular. And so he would go on shows like, at that time, Donnie and Marie and Wayne Brady had a show. There was also Hollywood Squares, which was great. And so that's when I would have two monitors. I would have the monitor that showed me what Bear looked like on TV. I would get the feed that the TV show would give so that I could see what Bear looked like as if you were watching at home. And then right next to it was a second monitor as a backup. So this way I could actually have Bear's vision and see where I was going, because Bear was the only Muppet character, because technically he is a Muppet. Bear's the only Muppet character who was able to walk out with the celebrities and get into his square, because that's how they introduced at the top of the show. They would introduce each star, and each star would come out, take a bow in front of the live studio audience, and then go into their square. When Kermit, Elmo, Big Bird, and Oscar did it, it was already preset because they couldn't walk out. But Bear could, and I was very proud of that.
Okay, so I have another question about the costume specifically, or the puppet, I should say, is that you've talked about on other podcasts that the puppet is washable, or that certain parts of the puppet can be dry cleaned. Is that?
Yeah, except for the head, Bear was actually in two halves. He was like the bottom half that was like almost like a big kind of like clown pants, and I would put my feet inside his feet, and they were like Nike sneakers inside, and I had a backpack, a harness that I would then put on and clip together, and that's where the monitor and the microphone were. So just alone was just this like kind of like big hoop skirt with bare feet and this harness, and then the top was put over me and then zipped up. And so, but considering that it got warm, because fur is warm, at one time I put a thermometer inside because people asked me, how hot does it get in there? And at one point during the height of doing the monologue and then doing a dance, it got up to like 92 degrees inside. But it's a dry heat. And
I'm sure.
So then we would have like hiatus weeks, and that's when Bear would get cleaned. And so except for the head, the feet would come off like slippers, and then the fur got unbuttoned from what was called the helix, the understructure that was all netting and webbing to keep that nice body shape. That would go to the dry cleaners and get dry cleaned. A special dry cleaners that's used for costumes like on Broadway and for stage work. So they knew exactly how to clean that. And then the fur was hand washed back at the Henson shop and then hung to dry. So they was all nice and clean. And I always made a point of making sure my hygiene was good because I didn't want to like put anybody through anything. And so it was nice and clean and dry. And in order to keep me from like passing out during that first season, the air conditioning in the studio was cranked all the way up. So it was freezing inside and people would like complain how cold it was. The wrap gift at the end of the season, everybody got these wonderful fleece jackets with Bear in the Big Blue House embroidered on it. So that this way, for season 2, you come back, you wear your fleece jacket, and you don't complain.
Yeah, as if the incentive of keeping you from heat stroke wasn't enough.
Exactly. So it just like delayed the passing out. So,
well, let's stick with the bear costume for a little longer. Can you just take me through all of the controls? So I know there's a false arm, but it's movable, and then you have the one arm you do use and the arm that goes into the bear's mouth.
Yeah.
Can you just explain pretty much all that and how that works?
Well, that's like I said before, I called it the Big Bird technology because Big Bird is very similar in terms of style to Bear. Carol Spinney, who I worked with on Sesame Street and learned everything about body puppetry from. Big Bird, he wears Big Bird's legs like a pair of pants, and then you put Big Bird on top of him, and Carol puts his right arm straight up into Big Bird, and his hand goes into Big Bird's beak, and he has a little control on his index finger or his pinky to make Big Bird's eyelids go up and down. And then his left arm goes into Big Bird's left wing, and then there's a string that goes up through the neck, through a little ring, down to the right wing. So this way, whenever Carol moved his left arm, the right wing would move. Bear was the same thing. I would put my right arm up through his neck, into the head, put my hand into his mouth. My index finger had a little trigger that would move the eyebrows up and down. And my left arm would go into Bear's left arm. And there was a little monofilament that went up through a little ring under his chin and then down to the right arm. So then whenever I moved my left arm, the right arm would move. But then by the last season, we had like a wild arm that was designed and built so that on certain occasions, Bear could have a right hand. So there was like, for one time, we wanted to try it. Like Bear opened, door, welcomed you, sniffed you, just smelled really good. And then he would like pick up like a letter or a book or a package. And then he brought it really close to camera. And as Bear brought it close to camera, that's when Jim Krupa was the fifth puppeteer on the show. He had the wild arm on, so that Bear could actually point to things while my hand was holding something, and then put it back in the box. And then as Bear stepped back, Jim would step away, and it looked like Bear was just stepping back. So it kept that illusion. So for a while, people were like, wait a minute, like his right hand is moving and his left hand's moving. It's like, what's going on? It's like, yep. So that was our little trick.
So when you didn't have that other person's arm and you were just doing the normal, false arm with the string, was it reversed? So if you lowered Bear's arm, the other arm would go up, or was it that one would go up and the other would go up with it? How did that lever?
It was a counter lever. So if my left hand went up, the right hand would go down. And if I lowered my left arm, the right arm would come up. So then we started to have different lengths for certain things. Like when Bear would dance, especially the Bear Cha-Cha-Cha, we used a shorter one. So this way his arms would really look like they were active when he was dancing.
Ah, okay. Did you have any control over the ears at all? Could you move the ears?
No, there was no control over the ears. No, that's part of the illusion. That was just like gravy. So it was just like, if you thought the ears were moved, that means I was doing a good job.
I mean, puppeteers don't get nearly enough credit for how, lifelike and fluid all of this looks. And I'm sure that took years and years of practice and being on other TV shows and doing other things. So let's actually talk about some of the stuff. What did you do before Bear in the Big Blue House? Some of your major highlights in production.
Oh, if you, it's like, pretty much, I'm so proud that my resume is most people's childhood memory. So if you got to watch way too much television as a child, you probably saw something that I did. The first thing I worked on was this TV show. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Sesame Street.
I have.
And I started out with what was called the Wrangler, the person who took care of the puppets, and then I segued into doing background characters. And my first bit is actually, it's on YouTube. I discovered it recently. It's when I got my first speaking role, and I'm a clerk, and Grover's online explaining about being last and waiting in line, and I'm the clerk, and I had one line, and I blew it, and so they had to do what's called a pickup, which resulted in me getting a close up. So I flubbed the line, but I got a close up out of it.
Well, there you go.
And so, yeah, and then after that, I did like other background stuff, like assisting the other puppeteers, and also doing like second chicken from the right, third grouch from the left. And then I got to do a speaking role for the first Sesame Street movie called Follow That Bird. And I was the chair bird, this bird in a turban that sets up the whole movie. She's the head of the Feathered Friends Society, this self-righteous social service for birds that wants to place Big Bird with his own kind. And so that was like another role for me, as well as being Carol's understudy. So for certain shots, like Big Bird in a haystack or getting, chased by a plane, that's me instead of Carol. And then I also did a show way back around the same time. It was called The Great Space Coaster, and it was a syndicated show. And I took over a character that John Lovelady, who was the puppeteer on the show, he did a character named Knock Knock, who was this little female woodpecker. And John went off to do a show on NBC called Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which was about a talking orangutan that gets elected to Congress, which at that time seemed ludicrous. These days, it would be a relief. So then I took over the character for the next to last season of the show, which was fun. And after that was doing at the end of the 80s into the 90s was the show on Nickelodeon called Eureka's Castle. And I got to be a character named Magellan, who was a dragon, and who was very similar again to Big Bird and to Bear. He was a full body puppet that I wore. And after that, then through the 90s, there were shows like I worked on shows like Ubi and
I found Ubi. Oh my gosh.
Ubi. Well, Ubi was in the 90s, like the early 2000s, but Ubi and Between the Lions. And I also worked on Jim Krupa and I worked on the original Snuggle Bear commercials. And I did the third Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie, Ninja Turtles 3, when they go back in time. And I was the puppeteer for Raphael. And Matt Hill, who was a voice actor, he was inside Raphael. And so Matt would do all the acting and the body movement, and I would manipulate the head, the facial features by remote control off camera. And so that was like a little busy before doing Bear. So.
Well, hold on, because I want to stop you right there, because, when I was looking and researching for Defunct TV, and I was like, what is a good episode topic to start on? And then Bear in the Big Blue House, I kind of stumbled upon it, and I was like, okay, this is a major player in Playhouse Disney and the Disney Channel, and it's a good intro to the world of television. But for somehow, on the way, when I was looking up all these puppet shows from the late 90s to early 2000s, I found Ubi, and I watched a couple episodes, and it is weird.
Oh, yes. We apparently, some of our biggest fans were, especially because Ubi eventually started showing sort of early in the morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So eventually some of our biggest fans became kids coming back from parties who were just really stoned and would just sit and just watch Ubi and just love the fact that these hands were just talking. And yeah.
I can totally imagine two stoned guys watching Ubi at 3 a.m. and just looking down at their hands and being like, "Oh my gosh, my hands were puppets the whole time."
Yeah, it was for those of you out there who don't know it, Ubi was the show created by the guy who created the Wonder Pets. That was right after Ubi, but it was a puppet show. But the puppets were our bare hands, and on top of them were glass eyes. That's it. And if you're lucky, they will pay you to do this. And the characters would only speak one word or two words at a time. And so my character was Keiko, and he wore a little red hat. And he would say things like, "You, Ubi, friends, perfecto, mwah." That's it. It's just that's. And so it was really fun when we did the musical episode, because the characters were going to put on the play Little Red Riding Hood, and we thought, how are these characters going to do a musical if they're only allowed to speak 1 to 2 words at a time? But it actually worked. It was actually one of the best episodes we ever did. It was really funny. Yeah, it was with Tim Lagasse and Stephanie DeBruzzo, and again Tyler Bunch. We were the main puppeteers for the show, and it was great. We did 2 full seasons of that, and it was really fun. And yeah, looking back now, it's just like it's still such one of those wonderful, weird little shows that came along. That was such a treasure.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there are not more puppet shows now. I mean, we have a lot of animations. I mean, CGI is so easy to do now for TV studios. I really think that there was so much more depth and places and chances for world building with these puppet shows, and there's just not as many anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they were the artists at the Jim Henson Company, the way they designed and built Bear and the characters, and Jim Krupa, who was one of the puppeteers for Bear, he had a company named 3 Design Studio. They're the ones who created the characters for Eureka's Castle and for another Nickelodeon show called The Legos Window. And they did some of the puppets for that. And they're truly underrated, the people who can make puppets, because people think, oh, a puppet, it doesn't cost that much. It's a puppet. So that's when professional puppeteers will get a call from producers like, so I have this great idea. I want to use a puppet. I want the puppet to do this and this and this and this and this. How much would it be? And the professional puppet builder will tell them the price, and they'll say, oh, well, I only have $100. And so it's like, so in that case, it's like you want to tell them, okay, you know what? I want to do, a show that has this, 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 and this. And they'll say, well, what's your budget? Oh, I don't have one. So can you make it anyway? I mean, it's that kind of mentality that we're dealing with. And they think that, it's just easier to do with animation. The classic story that I have is I had an idea for this great music show, a live action music show with a human host, Aaron Nigel Smith. Go to YouTube, look him up. He's a great entertainer for families and for adults. And he was going to be the main character and all these puppet characters on this island. And I had like a map of the island and little cutout figures and all the Bibles and great illustrations. And I was pitching it to one of the major American kids channels. And right off the bat, the producer said, it's puppets? I was like, yes. It's like, well, puppets are really geared towards really little kids. And I bit my lip from saying, but your channel is geared for really little kids.
Right.
And so I kept going to the point where it kind of felt like watching the last 20 minutes of Titanic. It was just that depressing after a while. And so I asked her, okay, in all seriousness, because I know you're going to pass on this, what do you really want? And she said, no, I'll be honest. If you can create a show, an inexpensive 3D, even 2D animated show, where during the course of the episode, the characters have to collect things that we can translate into merchandise the kids at home have to buy, that is what we want.
That's depressing.
Yep. People are always shocked, oh my God, oh my gosh. It's like, it's like, because somehow people are always shocked because it's children's television. But here's the thing I always tell them. Children's television is what's part of show business. And there's a reason why it's called show business.
Yeah, but I personally think that approach actually results in less merchandising, because if your purpose is to go in and we're going to sell a lot of merchandise, we're going to do a lot of sales externally, and that's the purpose of the show, then the quality of the show is going to suffer, and then your fan base just won't be there to begin with. But Bear, on the other hand, I mean, that had a ton of merchandising, but Bear wasn't created for the purpose of merchandising.
Oh yeah, we had it was like at one point the merchandise machine was just getting all the stuff out. I remember I did an appearance in England, and it was to promote the new line of Bear toys that was coming out for the Disney store. Back then, the Disney stores were huge. And so I went to this one mall, and I always had a 20-minute show of songs and interactive with kids. And so I went, and it was like packed. I mean, they figured like, they figured like, 50, 75 people. It was massive. I mean, all these people on the other floors looking down at Bear. And I did, I think I did one show. And at the end of it, the Disney Channel, the Disney store in the mall was so inundated. Every Bear item was gone. They made in that one day what they would have made the entire Christmas season. And for England, the Christmas season begins like in, October all the way through the end of December. They made their Christmas, like the numbers for the Christmas season for 3 months in one day because of this little talking bear out there just wiggling his butt and cha-cha-chaing. And I did an appearance at the back then it was the flagship Disney store in New York City on Fifth Avenue. And it was 3 floors and it was beautifully designed. And I went there early with the Wrangler, and they showed us like behind the scenes. They had like this on this dry erase board how they had planned everything out. Bear would be here, and there would be stroller parking, and people would line up on this side, and people would be given a number. So in case they wanted to go shopping, they could come back and resume their place in line. And the Wrangler and I kind of like did a little glance to each other, like, yep, sure. So. And it was going to be a simple one. You just come, you say I had a bear, you take a photograph, and you move on. That's it. And they were expecting maybe, they're maybe expecting maybe 100, at the most 200 people. 1,500 people showed up.
Just at this mall?
No, it was at the Disney store on Fifth Avenue, to the point where twice they had to close the store. They couldn't let anybody else in until like a certain number had seen Bear. And it was like such controlled pandemonium. It was unbelievable. It was like people were coming by. This one grown woman and her boyfriend came, and she was like weeping. It was unbelievable. And then it got to the point where, in order to keep things going, I had to, instead of them coming to me, I had to like it's what I did before at another appearance where it got so crowded. I went down the line. And I just went down the line and said hi, and they took a picture and and just went down and just zigzagged my way through the line in order for people to get a chance to see Bear, and then took a break. So then those people could leave and like the new slew could come in. But they totally underestimated the power of puppetry and a talking bear. So yeah, he was very popular. I'm very pleased about that.
I mean, yeah, just researching for the show, I'm putting on episodes of Bear in the Big Blue House, and people are walking by or walking into my place, and they're like, wait, is that Bear in the Big Blue House? It's not like what is that?
Right.
They recognize it. I mean, even if maybe it's not their generation or it wasn't their time, something about that imagery was just so popular, they recognize it and they understand it. And on that note, I found myself falling in love with the show because it is so calming and soothing, and the world is so chaotic, and the show is like the exact opposite. It's just so gentle, and the plot is so, simple because it's for preschoolers, but it's just a very soothing, calming experience to watch the show.
Oh yeah, when I went to audition, I walked in, and Peter Van Roden again, he caught me as soon as I walked in, and he just said to me, "Use your real voice." And I said, "What? But we're the Muppets, we don't do that." He said, No. Use your real voice, because they wanted to design Bear to be the anti-Barney. They wanted a show designed so that kids and their parents or caregivers could sit together the way Bear was sharing his time with the young kid at home. They wanted that same feeling to then continue after the show was over, so that the grown-up could then continue having an adventure with the kid at home, as well as the fact they wanted to have, a character whose voice didn't make your eyes gouge out every time you heard it. So
yeah, and that is so accurate because, I mean, that show was huge. So many people know what it is, but no one has any negative feelings towards it, like just strong negative reactions toward that show the same way they do for other shows, such as, Caillou, for instance, or Barney. I mean, it's just such a different reaction, so positive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was always flattered that when he first premiered, a New York critic here said Bear was Mr. Rogers in a fur coat, which was like one of the highest praise. So that at one point, for one show at the very beginning, Bear like picks up a sweater that's hanging on the coat rack in the foyer, and he puts it on. And as soon as he turns around, I do this sort of like faux-ish, like Mr. Rogers kind of voice. And then, it's like one of the few times Bear actually like wore clothes. But it was a very sincere and genuine show. And I still get every now and then an email, a fan email, first from the kids who watch the show who are now like graduating college, and then from moms and parents of kids with autism and special needs whose kids still watch the show on DVD or on that VHS tape that they made like all those years ago. And that's when I realized there's no show like this on anymore, Bear or Mr. Rogers. And so that's why I've been trying to develop my own show for kids with autism and special needs. And it's called The Show Me Show. And I have a channel on YouTube and I have a website. And so I'm developing this show to try and come back to a show where it's, very sincere, very gentle, not too loud, not in your face, and just a really fun place, but a nice, gentle place that you go to, just the way you did at the Big Blue House.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Definitely send me those links, and anyone listening right now, I'm sure they'll be in the description. Just whether you're on iTunes or whether you're on YouTube, just go down there and you can check out the links that Noel's going to send me on these. But Noel, you also wrote some episodes of Bear in the Big Blue House on top of writing this new show that you're doing and doing all of these other shows afterwards. Did you write and direct? I mean, what did you do on the production side, not just acting? I
think I wrote around 4 episodes, I think, and I directed 1. Yeah.
And one of the episodes you wrote, I've seen the ending to, which is the Harvest Moon Party for Luna. It was the big cast version of the Goodbye song.
Oh yeah, that's when I co-wrote. So that'd be a 5th one. That was when I co-wrote with Mitchell Kriegman, who created the show, and that was I think that was the season 2 episode, the last episode, because we weren't sure if we were getting renewed or not. So we thought, okay, let's go out with a really big, like, festive kind of show. So that's where we had like every single character who had ever been on the show be in this last scene, which and Bear and Luna always sang the Goodbye song. And this is the only time you got the extended version of the Goodbye song that Peter Lorre had to go back and write.
Yeah, and in this episode, there's 2 bears. I mean, there's Bear, who you were playing, and there's also Ursa, who is Bear's friend. That just has to be the normal bear costume with a cloth around it and a different voice, right? I mean, it's the only difference is that cloth.
Well, that was the PR bear before the mall tour even happened. They had a PR bear that would go and do appearances, because when I wasn't available, they would have the PR bear go and do appearances at a store, and so we just used that bear and dressed it with a shawl and a little fan. And Matt Vogel was inside puppeteering it. And yes, and Matt has now like gone on to other things. He is now Big Bird. Now that Carol's retired, he is now Big Bird. And most recently, Matt is now Kermit the Frog. And so Matt was inside. And then the voice of Ursa, because she is from Spain and she speaks Spanish, was Carmen Osbar. And Carmen is a puppeteer that I've worked with for so long and a dear friend, and we worked together on Sesame Street. Carmen is the puppeteer for Rosita, as well as she and I worked on a show back in the early 90s called The Puzzle Place, and she was Kiki and my character was named Leon. And just take a moment to think what Leon spelled backwards is. There you go.
I get it.
And so she was the voice, and so Matt was lip syncing along, and so it was kind of established that Bear had this pen pal named Ursa, and at one point they did a split screen like calling, and Bear like called each other. So for this show, that's when we had Ursa come to the Big Blue House, and it kind of became established that Ursa was kind of Bear's girlfriend, and they had a very special relationship. Because I see where you're going with that. Was Ursa Bear's girlfriend? Yes, Ursa was Bear's girlfriend, and we thought, you know what? Let's introduce the fact that Bear has a special friend, Ursa, and they like being together, and just like, yeah. So the last shot, Bear's in the kitchen, he's saying goodnight to you, and then hope you had fun at the Big Blue House. And then the back door, that's when Ursa says, "Vamos, Bear, you promised we could sit and watch the stars." And I said, "Oh yes." And so that's when she comes in and says to everybody, "Buenas noches, which means good night. And that's when they turn and go out. And the last shot during the credits is Bear and Ursula sitting back to back with our backs to camera, looking up at the stars. And just before it fades out, that's when Bear's arm goes and puts his arm around Ursula's back, and then it just fades out. So
yeah, well, you guessed my question.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was
Yes.
going with that. I'm just trying to make sure all this fan fiction makes sense. I don't want my writings to have any plot holes in it. I just had to know, is Ursula really Bear's girlfriend? So thank you for answering that.
no, it was true. And plus, we also established the fact that in Spain, Ursula, who lives on a farm, she goes out every night onto her balcony and talks to Luna as well. So it just seems to be a Bear thing that the moon does. So
Well, that's nice to know.
Yeah.
And on kind of a related note, a big part of the show is napping and sleeping, and yet at least Hutter, he sleeps a lot in the episodes that I've watched. But then you also have Ray and Luna, and they can never sleep, right? Because no matter what side of the world they're on, they're always just talking to people on balconies.
yes, exactly. They're just like constantly on and constantly awake.
It's like they're cursed. I just want to sleep.
Exactly. Which I think is probably when eclipses come in handy, because in this way, one of them gets a break. And so
Yes, that is perfect. Fantastic.
so every 1 to 200 years, they actually get to take like, a quick 10-minute nap, and then they're on for another millennium.
Yeah, great. We've added something to the Bear in the Big Blue House canon. I'm just looking to boost the world, really help out the lore. As I want to make it my own, really.
People always ask, like, who is Ojo? And I said, because, Tutter lives with Bear, because, Tutter and Bear were technically roommates. And then the otters live out in the otter pond, and Tweedle lives in a tree nearby. And people always say, who is Ojo? Where does she live? And I always said that Ojo lives down the street.
Okay.
And her mom is like, this high-powered lawyer who like is always working, single mom. So then she allows Ojo to come and hang out at the Big Blue House. So it's kind of like sort of free daycare that she's taking advantage of.
well, Ojo's a bear.
Yes.
And Bear's a bear.
Yes.
But they're not related. It's just like the Avenue Q song. We got in the messy territory for assuming that they're related just because they're both bears.
They're just friends. That's just friends. And people also ask me too, like, does Bear know, Kermit the Frog? And I would always say that, well, Bear knows of Kermit the Frog because Kermit's famous, just like Bear knows of Brad Pitt and, Angelina Jolie and George Clooney, because they're famous. But, Bear doesn't personally know Kermit, even though they are within that sort of Muppet family canon. Even though Bear's a Muppet, he doesn't know Kermit, but he knows of Kermit because the Muppets, in the Muppet world, the Muppets are celebrities. They are like, the celebrity, equivalent, So there's like the celebrities on Sesame Street, the characters on Sesame, they know Kermit because Kermit used to hang out there. But, they don't know Miss Piggy. They know of Miss Piggy, and they've seen her, but she's a celebrity, so,
It's also super depressing to think that all the people on Sesame Street knew Kermit, and Kermit just totally forgot about them and went to become famous in Hollywood.
Right. Well, actually, on YouTube now, there's this bit of Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Back in the early 90s, they made an appearance at MIT during the Puppeteers of America festival back then. And they're on stage and they're answering questions they're talking about. And at one point, Jim pulls out Kermit and Frank pulls out Cookie Monster. And Cookie Monster begins to berate Kermit over the fact that he left his little friends on Sesame Street behind to go off and be big star, don't have time to come back and sing the alphabet. Oh, no. And it's really funny how Cookie's giving Kermit such a hard time.
I love that. Again, we're building on the lore of all the Henson productions. It's great because there's so much. There's so many casts of characters, so many different properties to play off of. But, now it's split, right, between Disney and Jim Henson Productions.
Well, yeah, because Disney owns Bear and the Muppets, and Sesame Workshop now has complete ownership of the Sesame Street characters. But the Jim Henson Company still owns, for instance, Fraggle Rock. They still own the Dark Crystal, which even as we speak, they're doing the new Netflix series over in London. And I have friends over there working on it right now, which will be coming out, I think, some point late this year or early next year. And it's a prequel to the Dark Crystal. So, yeah, so they are, and they've also done things for TV. They've done a new computer animated version of the Doozers, and they were involved in the exhibitions. There's the Jim Henson exhibition in New York at the Museum of the Moving Image in Queens, and then there's the exhibition of the Muppets and Jim Henson at the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, and so they were heavily involved in that. And there's also the Jim Henson Foundation, the Jim Henson Legacy that just keep so sort of like, Jim's legacy, and Jane, his wife, too, their legacy going and make people aware of it. And so they sponsor not scholarships, but the money you would need in order to help develop your puppet show or puppet piece. They do that every year, and they work closely with the University of Storrs, Connecticut, which UConn, which still has its 4-year puppetry program. And so so they're still involved in stuff.
Okay, yeah. And so I have a few more bear specific questions. The first is pretty easy.
Okay.
How many times did you miss the swing? For anyone that hasn't watched an episode where you do this, there's a giant swing in the middle of Bear's living room, and you just go over there, and you have you only get one hand, and you grab onto one of and then you jump on the swing. I mean, you had to have fallen a few times, right? I mean, was it just immediate, just first time, and you never fell? Because you're only using one hand. Just please tell me you at least fell once.
No. If I did slip, I would always slip like kind of forward, but I never slipped backwards. But I learned that how to do it. Just like it would be like one quick little move and like up on it, and then kind of just very gently, just like rock back and forth. But yeah, there was a way to do it.
Okay, follow up. Did you ever fall at all in the bear costume? And I know it makes it sound like I want you to. I just am curious and I would be blown away if you never did.
No, I never have.
Never?
Not once. In fact, during the first season, like the first day, I went around and just like, especially in the foyer, just went around and kind of like counted like how many steps to the front door, how many steps to the stairs, how many stairs are there. And then I started doing it with my eyes closed. And if you look now, you'll notice that, especially for the foyer, there's rugs on the floor, and there's thresholds between the kitchen and the doorways of the living room. So this way I could actually, with my feet, feel where I was in relation. Because if they were cutting off Bear from the waist up, then I couldn't really see the full body, so that I could still feel where I was and get a judgment. And if Bear would like very gently, talk to you and step back, I could then feel the banister right behind me and stop. And then I could just turn around and start walking up the stairs. So it's kind of like if you suddenly were blind, learning how to live in your home. That's kind of like what it was like for the first couple of seasons. And also, this whole set was raised up 4 feet off the floor, so that they could pop out sections of the floor so that the other puppeteers could stand and just hold the puppets up over their heads, which would be up to Bear's waist. And then they would have kick plates, these pieces of 2x4 boards that would be on the edges. So this way, as I walked up to the characters, I could then feel with my foot the wood, and I would stop. And this way it prevented me from toppling on top of and crushing my co-stars.
Well, I was just about to ask that. Again, one step ahead of me, because when you said there's giant holes in the floor, how did you not fall in them? So,
yes,
that's
how.
That answers that.
Yeah.
So I have another oddly specific question.
There's no oddly specific question for a man who used to run around in a bear suit, so just ask away.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, here's a very weird one, and I hope you've never been asked this before, but I just have to know, have you ever had an adult approach you on the street or at a convention and just say, you taught me how to go to the bathroom?
Adults, not so much yet. So they are
Okay, yeah, I guess the timeline, that'd be weird.
Yeah, there's still a line that hasn't been crossed. So thank you out there. But when we did the episode, the potty episode, which is still sells really well on Amazon, the first day we were about to shoot, I told the crew as Bear, I was like, all right, we're going to be doing this for the next 3 days. You'll be hearing the following words: poop, pee, toilet, diaper. Get it out of your systems now. Okay, let's move on.
I'm sure that was a particularly fun episode.
Oh yeah. I mean, every episode was fun. I mean, our outtake reels were funny and occasionally naughty, but it's just like, because we're grown people too. So outtake reels for puppet shows could sometimes be some of the funniest, maybe now and then risque things you've ever seen, which is why you never see them.
Well, that actually leads me into my next question in that same vein. Otter Love, this song that is in one of the episodes,
Yes.
Pip and Pop finally get to do hip hop, and they sing or they rap the song called Otter Love, and you have some pipes on you, so you're in the back doing some smooth jam, doing the real soul stuff way in the back. And I mean, you had, when you were making this, it's a very, I don't want to turn a children's show that's supposed to be nice and kind and nothing more into anything but that, but there had to be a point where whoever wrote this, and when you were performing it, you all looked around and just kind of like referenced how sexual that this song seems to be.
Oh yeah, I mean it's like, it was one of the reasons why we always pre-record the song, because there was like another song where the Otters were going to do it live, and they just kept messing it up, which was just so funny and just reinforced like, yes, this is why we take the time to pre-record songs. But this song was just really fun. All the songs on the show were just like really fun to do, and some of them were just like outstanding, like Otter Love. And even before that, Bear had a song called Love. And that was a fun song too. And then for the potty training, there was like, there was the toileteer song, and it was like, so it's just like all these like really silly songs, because it was entertaining for us, and it wasn't, the songs were never quote kiddie songs. They were all different styles. Even the theme song, if you look at the theme of the show, it's like, you've never seen that kind of a theme song for a kid's show before. And so, yeah, so it was just like, it was
some
really
heavy sax.
Yeah, just like breaking rules, and it was very jazzy. It was very sort of like a jazzy, improvisational jazz kind of like opening, but it's for this kid show. And yeah, we did all kinds of styles. We did, hip hop, we did country, we did ballads, we did gospel. It was fun.
And you also had the opportunity to do a 2 live crew style song called Otter Love.
Yes, we did.
So I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure I don't have the rights to play it. But yeah, no, I'm sure it's out there, and you can definitely go watch it in lieu of me playing the entire thing. But this is a very, very fun song. And so on a different part of the show, you have the song portion, but the very beginning, Bear opens the door and he sniffs you, and he asks, "What's that smell?" And he says something like, "Oh, you smell like berries, you smell like pancakes." One is like, "You smell like bananas." I mean, if you were sitting at home as a child and you were just sitting there and then you were eating a banana and then Bear was like, "You smell like bananas," wouldn't that just freak you out?
Oh yeah. I've gotten occasionally, like, somebody has said that that particular day, they had oatmeal, or they had taken a bath, or they had brushed their teeth, and so it was just like, yeah, so it was like that sort of like, oh my God. But then also the flip side of that is that at that point, because Bear, technically Bear, if he's smelling you, he could see you, so he knows who you are. So then I realized, doing these appearances, Bear kind of has sort of like, the Santa Claus thing where he knows you. So I could never ask a kid, "What's your name?" because Bear would know who you are.
Right. He invited you into his home.
Right.
I'd hope he knows who you are.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, so parents would occasionally tell me their name. And so that would be great, but I could never ask a kid, it's like, "Oh, and what's your name?" It's like, I would always say, "Oh, you made it. Oh, I was hoping you would come." Say, "There you are. I've been waiting all day to see you." And just go with it like that. Just shy of, "Hey, you," it's just
"Hey, sport." Yeah.
Buddy,
"Hey, bud, how you doing today?"
Champ.
That's great. And so you did 3 seasons of Bear. Oh, wait, no, you did.
Actually,
yeah.
We did 4 seasons. We did 3 seasons, and then we actually did get the green light to come back. And that's when Mitchell thought, it's been 4 years since the start of the show, and our audience will have grown in those 3 to 4 years. So that's when they decided to have the kid characters go through new adventures, similar to what the kids at home would be going through. So Tutter started to go to mouse school and was getting ready to go to school.
Okay, this is the Woodland Valley seasons.
Yeah, Ojo was, learning to ride a bicycle, and Trilo was experimenting, being creative and doing art. And so we were going to do that. We were also going to explore outside the Big Blue House because that's what the kids at home were doing because now they were seeing more of their world. So that's why for the fourth season, the whole opening changed. So now you could see all of Woodland Valley, the town that Bear and his friends lived in, and you got a sense of the community. Then this was all planned in early 2001. Then something happened on September 11th, 2001. And that's when, after like took a break for like a month. We hadn't come back yet. And that's because we went back and it was decided that we were going to really concentrate on community and just show how community sticks together. It'll always be there for you. There's always going to be somebody there. The heroes in your community, like the firefighters, that kind of thing. And so that was like the new theme for the fourth season. So I wrote an episode all about heroes and how Pip and Pop are enamored with their favorite baseball player, Ferret Jeter, and then it turns out that Ferret and Bear went to school together, and that and Bear was the hero who won the game, and so sometimes a hero can be living with you, and just do small things like take care of you and make sure you're warm and safe and sound. And we did another one, Volunteers That Wouldn't Lie. And that was the episode I directed because they wrote it specifically so that, because Bear was in like 99.9% of, all the shows and all the scenes. So then this episode, it's written so that Bear hurts his foot and he has to stay home, but he still has these volunteer duties. So his little friends decide to go and fill in for him. And so Tutter and the Otters go to the library to do story time with all these bunnies. And then Ojo and Trilo go to the fire station and help clean the fire truck. And so that was the way of getting out of the fact that how can we not have Bear be in every scene and Noel still direct this, not lose his mind? So that was what they came up with. And then again, it just concentrated on the fact that, you have people in your neighborhood who like, your neighbors, you look out for each other, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Bear is a firefighter in this episode, and he's volunteering for the town.
Yes.
I thought it would be funny if, because he can't say no because he's so nice, he just got progressively more and more over his head helping people out. He's like, well, I guess I got to go to the coal mines today because Dr. Pig needs me to go, the coal mines. I got to go to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to help with calculations.
Yeah. The writers came up with this phrase. It was called, for each episode, basically, there was a formula to Bear if you really look at it, and it was called Bearus Interruptus, whereas Bearus always would open the door, welcome you, sniff you, you smell great. And then he would tell you his plan for the day or what he was thinking of doing. And then it always would get interrupted.
And so Breakfast with Bear was after Bear in the Big Blue House.
Yes.
Like the production.
Yeah, so we did like 120 episodes of Bear. And then after that, Nancy Cantor of the Disney Channel wanted to do a spin-off series. And so that's when we did Breakfast with Bear. And Breakfast with Bear became the show where Bear was in the real world, going to real kids' actual real homes to help them start their day. And there would be like the morning mambo to get them up and moving. Then there would be another segment where they're in the kitchen doing breakfast and talking about breakfast. A lot of kids' homes aren't built for a bear. So it was like got very interesting. How can we adapt? Like the fact that like doorways are kind of tight or ceilings are kind of low. And we did 10 episodes in New York and then 10 episodes in California. And we went everywhere from like a kid living in the Big Apple Circus to a kid living in the Army camp, Fort Irwin, in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And it was great. It was really fun going to these kids' actual homes and like interacting with them.
And so why did the original show end?
It did like done its run because they had 120 episodes that they could always run, and so just like it ran its course for Disney for Disney Channel. I mean, a show like Sesame Street is so rare because Sesame Street is about to go into season 50. And, you'll never see a kid show run that long, ever again, most likely. And so, so then, Bear ran then, and then they wanted to try something else with Bear. And so that's when we came up with, Breakfast with Bear. And, and now people keep asking me, so are they going to, bring Bear back? And it's like, well, I don't know. In this fever season of rebooting, maybe they would. So,
When was the last time you were in or, wore the bear costume?
It was like in 2007. It was for the Jerry Lewis telethon. And that was like the last time.
So the costume's just like in your closet, just like sitting there with like one light on it. So when you bust in and you're ready to save the day, it's like that superhero moment. You got like a really stern look on your face.
Probably be like, it's like in the Bat Cave, or just like with the spotlights shining.
Yeah, exactly. You push a button and the bear costume, kind of limp and all hunched over, comes up out of the ground, and there you go.
Yes, I know I don't have the costume here at home. It's safely stored away at Puppet Heap, who now takes care of the Muppets and the bear characters. So he's just standing by.
Well, Noel, thank you so much for being here today. It's been awesome. I had a lot of fun, and you answered so many of my oddly specific questions, so just thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And to all of you, thank you for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And thank you for visiting Defunctland.